My name is Alara Vance, and I am 81 years old. I've lived in the same small brick bungalow in central Ohio for 50 years, the one my husband Arthur and I bought when we were young and full of dreams. Arthur's been gone for 20 years now, and I get by on his old military pension and my Social Security. It's not a lot, but it's enough to keep the house and pay for my heart medicine. My greatest joy in this quiet life is my granddaughter, Lyra. She is 6 years old, and she is the only part of my son, Julian, that I still recognize. The rest of him, his spine, his laugh, his loyalty, it all seems to belong to his wife, Kaylin. The invitation for the party was a text message with a chili pepper emoji. Summer kickoff barbecue, it said. Kaylin doesn't do phone calls. She says they're inefficient. I put on my best blue cardigan, the one Lyra loves because it's soft, and drove my 20-year-old Buick to their neighborhood. I hated their house. It was a giant beige box in one of those new developments where all the trees are just skinny sticks. Their lawn was an aggressive, perfect green. It looked like a carpet, not a yard. I parked behind a line of huge, shiny black SUVs, my old car looking like a rowboat next to battleships. I clutched the heavy glass bowl of potato salad I'd made, Lyra's favorite, with the soft-boiled eggs, and walked up the long, concrete path. The air smelled like lighter fluid. The music was so loud it felt like a fist beating against my chest. Kaylin opened the door. She was wearing a white linen outfit that probably cost more than my entire monthly pension check. She didn't smile. Not really. It was a pulling of the lips. Alara. You made it, she said. Her voice was thin, like cheap glass. She didn't move to help me with the heavy bowl. She just held her wine glass and blocked the door. Julian's at the grill, she said, waving vaguely toward the backyard. Lyra's around here somewhere. Then she turned away to laugh at something one of her young, rich-looking friends said. I was a ghost. A piece of old furniture she was forced to dust off twice a year. I balanced the bowl on my hip, opened the screen door myself, and found my son. He was flipping burgers, surrounded by smoke. He had a strained look on his face, the one he always wore when I was at their home. Hi, Mom, he mumbled. He didn't meet my eye. Glad you could come. He used to be such a warm boy. He used to be my boy. Now, he was just her husband. I bore the disrespect. I bore the coldness. I bore it all, for Lyra. I set my potato salad on a table crowded with plastic containers of store-bought food. I scanned the yard, searching for Lyra. She always ran to me. The second she saw my Buick, she would come tearing across the grass, her honey blonde hair flying, and tackle my legs with a shout of "Grandma." That hug was the one thing that made these visits worth it. But today, there was no small girl running to greet me. I looked by the oversized swing set. I peered by the inflatable pool, where other children were splashing and screaming. No Lyra. A knot of anxiety, cold and sharp, began to form in my stomach. She was always the first one to find me. I asked a woman holding a bright blue cocktail where the children were playing. She pointed indoors without looking at me. I think Kaylin set up a movie in the den, she said, bored. I slipped back inside the house. The air conditioning was so cold it made my bones ache. The house was quiet away from the party. I walked down the long, gray-painted hallway. Their house didn't have pictures. It didn't have memories. It just had things. I pushed open the door to the den. The room was dark. The heavy blackout curtains were drawn. And that's when I saw her. My Lyra wasn't watching a movie. She was sitting on the floor in the far corner, facing the wall. Her small shoulders were shaking. She was wearing one of Julian's big baseball caps, pulled down low over her ears. Lyra, baby? I whispered. My heart suddenly started hammering against my ribs. Honey, what's wrong? Why are you hiding in here? She wouldn't turn around. She just whimpered. It was a tiny, animal sound of pure misery. I knelt. My 81-year-old knees cracked in protest on the plush carpet. I gently touched her shoulder. Sweetheart, talk to Grandma. Did someone hurt you? She shook her head, a violent no. And the oversized baseball cap slipped off. I couldn't breathe. I physically could not get air into my lungs. My vision swam. Her beautiful, honey blonde hair, the soft curls I had brushed and braided just last week, it was gone. It wasn't cut. It was shaved. Shaved clean to the scalp. It was patchy and uneven, with angry red patches where the clippers had bitten her delicate skin. My 6-year-old granddaughter was bald. All I could see was her scalp, white and vulnerable, and the tears streaming down her face as she tried to cover her head with her small, trembling hands. Mommy said I'm ugly now, she whispered. She said I look like a sick boy. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I went cold. A silence settled over me, a silence deeper and more terrifying than any rage I have ever felt. I scooped Lyra up. Her little body was trembling like a leaf. I wrapped her in my arms, pressing her face into the soft wool of my cardigan, and carried her out of that dark room. I walked straight out into the bright, laughing sunlight of the backyard. I walked past Julian at the grill. I walked past the staring guests with their blue cocktails. I stopped right in front of Kaylin. She was laughing with her friends, holding her wine glass. She saw me. She saw Lyra's head. Her laughter died for a second. And then it came back, but this time it was brittle and cruel. Oh, that, she said, waving her free hand as if I were holding a spilled drink. Don't look so horrified, Alara. The music was still pounding. The guests were still chatting. Lyra buried her face in my neck, her sobs now loud and heartbreaking in the open air. What, I said, did you do? My voice was quiet, but it cut through the party music. Every guest stopped talking. Every head turned. Kaylin's face flushed. She hated being the center of attention in the wrong way. My God, it's just a joke, she snapped, her voice high. The kids were playing with Julian's beard trimmers. Her cousin dared her. It was a prank. A prank? My Lyra was shaking with trauma. This was no prank. She looked ridiculous, Kaylin continued, her voice rising. She never lets me brush it. It's always a tangled mess. It's just hair, Alara. God. It'll grow back. Stop being so dramatic. It's just hair. Those words echoed in my head. I looked at my son. I looked at Julian, who was standing frozen by the grill, holding his metal spatula like a shield. Julian? I said. My voice was a plea. I begged him, with my eyes, to be a father. To be a man. To say something. He just stared. His face was pale. He was trapped between his mother and his wife. He looked at the ground. He said nothing. Julian's silence was his answer. That silence. That silence from my son broke the last thread that held me to him. In that moment, I knew my son was gone, replaced by this weak, hollow man who would let his wife humiliate his own child for a laugh. I turned my back on both of them. I held Lyra tight, kissed her wounded, shaven head, and I began to walk. Where do you think you're going? Kaylin's voice screeched. The fake laughter was gone. You can't just take her. I didn't stop. I walked through their perfect, carpet green yard. I walked down the concrete driveway, past all the expensive, shiny SUVs. I could hear Julian finally finding his voice. But he wasn't shouting at his wife. He was shouting at me. Mom, stop. Don't be so dramatic, he yelled, jogging after me. You're ruining the party. Mom! Get back here. Ruining the party. My granddaughter's dignity was destroyed, her heart was broken, and he was worried about his party. I didn't even look back. I got to my old Buick. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the lock. Lyra was trembling so hard I was afraid she would be sick. I fumbled with the seatbelt, strapped my weeping granddaughter into the passenger seat, and slammed the door. I started the engine. As I pulled away from the curb, I saw my son standing in the middle of the street, his hands on his hips, shouting at me. He looked pathetic. I pressed my foot on the gas and I didn't look in the rearview mirror. The ride home was silent, broken only by Lyra's small, hiccuping sobs. She had cried herself into exhaustion. I clutched the steering wheel, my knuckles white. The rage I felt was so hot, it was the only thing keeping my own tears from falling. I was 81 years old. I was tired. My bones ached. But I knew one thing with perfect clarity: I had just started the biggest fight of my life. I was not going to let them have her back. I took my granddaughter and I left. We arrived at my bungalow. The paint is peeling a little on the trim, and my climbing roses are overgrown, but it's a home. It's safe. I carried Lyra inside. She was almost asleep, her little body limp with exhaustion. I locked the front door, and for the first time in hours, I took a deep breath. I ran a warm bath for her. I used the Johnson's baby shampoo that I kept just for her visits, the one that smells like lavender. As I gently washed her poor, wounded head, I saw it all clearly. It wasn't a prank. There were nicks and small, bloody cuts all over her scalp. Kaylin had been rough. She had been angry. She had done this to her, not with her. Lyra just sat in the water, staring at her knees, silent. "Grandma," she whispered, her voice so small it barely made a sound. "Yes, my baby? Is Mommy right? Am I ugly now?" I had to stop. I closed my eyes and prayed for strength. I would not cry in front of this child. I knelt on the bath mat, my knees screaming, and I turned her to face me. "You listen to me, Lyra," I said, my voice firm. "You are not ugly. You are the most beautiful girl in the world. Your hair does not make you beautiful. Your heart does. Your laugh does. And your hair will grow back. But you are beautiful right now." She looked at me, her big eyes searching my face, and she finally, truly, sobbed. She wrapped her wet arms around my neck and cried into my shoulder, letting out all the terror she had been holding in. She said no one would love me now," Lyra cried. "She said I was bad." "She is wrong," I whispered, rocking her. "She is wrong, and I will never let her say that to you again." After her bath, I wrapped her in my softest towel and put her in one of Arthur's old t-shirts. It swallowed her whole, but it was soft. I made her a cup of warm milk with honey. She fell asleep on my sofa, clutching my hand. My phone started ringing. The screen lit up, Julian. It rang once. Twice. 10 times. I let it ring. It buzzed again. A text message from him. "Mom, stop this. You can't just kidnap my daughter. Kaylin is sorry. Bring her back now." I looked at the phone. I looked at the sleeping child, her face stained with tears, her scalp red and raw. I turned the phone off and threw it in a drawer. They called it kidnapping. I called it rescuing. I didn't sleep. I sat in my old rocking chair all night long, watching Lyra sleep on the couch. Every time she whimpered in her sleep, every time her little body twitched from a nightmare, my rage burned hotter. I thought about my life. I'm 81. I live on a fixed income. My back hurts when it rains, and I have to take 3 different pills just to get through the day. What was I doing? Julian was right about one thing. I had taken his child. They would call the police. What would happen? Would they listen to an old woman? Or would they listen to the rich, young couple with the perfect house and the high-powered lawyers? I saw my future flash before my eyes. A courtroom. A judge telling me I was senile and dramatic. I saw them forcing Lyra into Kaylin's arms. And I saw myself being put in a home. That was their favorite threat. Kaylin mentioned it every time I disagreed with her. You know, Alara, at your age, you shouldn't be living alone. We've seen some very nice nursing homes. They would use this. They would say I was unstable. They would take Lyra and lock me away. Fear, cold and acidic, flooded my stomach. I looked at Lyra. She had kicked off the blanket. I saw her shaved head, so small and defenseless in the moonlight. They had hurt her. They had called her ugly. They had threatened her. The fear vanished. The rage returned. Let them call the police. Let them bring their lawyers. Let them try to put me in a home. I am Alara Vance. I survived the loss of my husband. I have survived 81 years on this earth. I will not be bullied by a cruel woman and a spineless boy. I will not let her go back. I would call a lawyer in the morning. I would call Child Protective Services. I would show them the nicks on her head. I would tell them what Lyra said. I would burn their perfect, beige world to the ground before I let them hurt this child again. The sun started to rise, painting the living room in a soft, gray light. I was exhausted. But for the first time in years, I knew exactly who I was. I was a grandmother. And I was a warrior. Alara is ready to fight. At 7 in the morning, there was a knock on my door. It wasn't a loud, angry pounding. It was soft. Hesitant. Lyra was still asleep. I grabbed my heavy cast-iron skillet from the kitchen, I'm 81, not a fool, and walked to the door. I looked through the peephole. It was Julian. He was alone. His expensive SUV was parked at the curb, but he looked nothing like the angry man from the party. He looked broken. He wasn't wearing his polo shirt from the barbecue. He was wearing a wrinkled t-shirt and sweatpants. He hadn't shaved. His eyes were red and swollen, like he had been crying for hours. He saw me through the peephole and just put his forehead against the door. He didn't knock again. I put the skillet down. I unlocked the deadbolt and opened the door. He didn't try to push past me. He just stood on my old, cracking porch, his hands trembling. "Mom," he whispered. His voice was raw. "You have no right to be here, Julian," I said. My voice was cold. "You have 5 seconds to leave my porch before I call the police." "Please," he begged. It wasn't a demand. It was a sob. "Please, Mom. I messed up. I know. I know." "You knew?" I said, my voice rising. "You knew she was going to do that to your daughter?" "No." "God, no," he said, shaking his head. "I didn't know until I heard the clippers. I ran in, and Kaylin was just standing there, holding them. Lyra was. Mom, she was just laughing. Kaylin was laughing. It was like she wasn't even there." I stared at him. This was new. "She's sick, Mom," he whispered, and now the tears were rolling down his face. "She's really, really sick. And I'm so scared." "Sick in the head is what she is," I snapped. "She's cruel." "That's not a sickness, Julian, that's a choice." "No, Mom, you don't understand," he choked out. He looked past me, into the house, and saw Lyra sleeping on the couch. A sound came out of him, a terrible, guttural sound of a man who had lost everything. He slid down my doorframe and sat on the porch, burying his face in his hands. "Please," he begged from the ground. "Please, you have to help me. You have to give my wife a chance to live." "A chance to live?" I stood in the doorway, my heart hammering against my ribs. "A chance to live? What are you talking about, Julian? Stop speaking in riddles." He looked up at me, his face a mess of tears and stubble. It's not a secret, exactly. Kaylin didn't want anyone to know. She didn't want people to pity her. I waited. The morning air was cool, but I felt a hot dread spreading through my chest. "Kaylin has aplastic anemia, Mom," he said, his voice cracking. "A rare blood disease. Her bone marrow, it's failing. It's not making new blood cells." I just stared at him. I had heard of it. It was bad. "We've known for a year," he continued, the words spilling out of him. "We've tried treatments. Immunosuppressants. Blood transfusions every week. Nothing is working. The doctors, they told us last month. She has 6 months, maybe. Unless what?" I whispered. "Unless she gets a bone marrow transplant." I leaned against the doorframe. My legs felt weak. This was not what I was expecting. I was ready for a fight, for lawyers, for police. I was not ready for this. "Her family has been tested," Julian said, his voice dead. "Her parents, her sister. No match. I was tested. No match." He looked at me, his eyes full of a desperate, terrible hope. "We were going to ask, that's what the party was supposed to be about," he said. "We were going to tell the whole family. We were going to ask everyone to get tested. It was our last chance." He paused, taking a ragged breath. "But yesterday morning," he whispered, "the doctor called. Her numbers are crashing. The transfusions aren't holding anymore. The doctor said she doesn't have 6 months. She has weeks." He was sobbing openly now, a grown man crumpled on my doorstep. "She's terrified, Mom. She's not sleeping. She's not the woman you think she is. She's just so scared of dying." I looked at him, my mind racing, trying to put the pieces together. The party. The timing. The strange, cruel laughter. "What does this have to do with Lyra's head, Julian?" I asked. And the story he told me, the real story, was 1,000 times worse than just a joke. "Kaylin is dying. Does this change anything?" "She snapped," Julian said, his voice hollow. "It's the only way I can describe it. She just broke." He told me everything. Kaylin was on a high dose of steroids as part of her treatment. The doctor had warned them about side effects, mood swings, anxiety, even paranoia and psychosis. "She's been getting worse," Julian confessed. "Crying for hours, then yelling, then laughing. She'll buy thousands of dollars of stuff online, like she's trying to. I don't know. Feel something." "The hair," I pressed. "Tell me about the hair, Julian." "Lyra," he said, his voice thick with shame. She's our last chance. Her and you." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "Children are often a better match for a parent," he said. "And grandparents can be, too. You and Lyra, you're the last 2 people in our entire family line who could be a match. We were going to ask you both to get tested this week." I felt sick. "Yesterday," Julian continued, "after the doctor's call, Kaylin just shut down. She locked herself in the bathroom. When she came out, she had this bright, fake smile." He told me Lyra had been in the den, watching a cartoon. She had been complaining about a tangle in her hair. She asked Kalen to brush it. Kalen just stared at her, Julian said, wiping his nose. She stared at Lyra's long, beautiful, healthy hair. And she must have just hated her for it. He said Kalen went to the bathroom, got his beard trimmers, and walked back to the den. She told Lyra it was a new game, he said, his voice breaking. She called it the Princess Beauty Salon. Lyra, she trusted her. She sat still. I closed my eyes. The image of my granddaughter, sitting still, trusting the woman who was mutilating her. I heard the buzzing, Julian choked. I ran in. By the time I got there, it was done. Hair was everywhere. Kalen was just standing there, holding the clippers, laughing. She kept saying, "Now we match. Now we're all sick. It's just a funny joke." She hadn't just been cruel. It had been a psychotic break. An act of terror and jealousy and madness, fueled by steroids and the fear of death. Julian looked up at me, his face destroyed by shame. "I didn't know what to do," he whispered. I was in shock. And then all the guests were there, and you were looking at me. And I failed. I know I failed. He grabbed my hand. His was cold and clammy. "I'm not asking you to forgive her, Mom. I'm not even asking you to understand. I'm begging you. She's a 35-year-old woman, and she's dying. She's my wife. She's Lyra's mother." He looked me in the eyes. "Please," he begged. "Please, give my wife a chance to live. Please, get tested." She did it because she was sick. She did it because she was dying. She did it because she hated Lyra for being healthy. This is an impossible situation. I stood there on my porch for a long time, looking at my broken son. All night, I had been a warrior. I was filled with rage and fire. I was ready to fight lawyers and judges. Now, I just felt old. And so tired. This wasn't a story about a villain and a hero anymore. It was a tragedy. There were no monsters. There were just broken, sick, and terrified people. Kalen had done an unforgivable thing. But was it her? Or was it the disease? Was it the poison they were pumping into her veins to keep her alive? If I said no, if I refused to get tested, I would be sentencing my son's wife to death. I would be making Lyra's mother a memory. But if I said yes, what was I teaching Lyra? That you can forgive anything? That you can hurt someone, mutilate them, and still get what you want? I looked inside. Lyra had stirred. She was sitting up on the couch, rubbing her eyes, her little shorn head so vulnerable. She saw her father crying on the porch and her face filled with fear. That fear. That's what made up my mind. Kalen's sickness was not her fault. But Julian's weakness was. He had stood by. He had let his daughter be terrified. He had yelled at me. My rage was gone. But my strength was not. "Get up, Julian," I said. My voice was quiet, but it was steel. He stood up, wiping his face. "Here's what is going to happen," I said, and I did not stutter. "First, you are going to go back to your house. You are going to call Kalen's doctor, and you are going to tell them she had a psychotic break and needs to be hospitalized. Today. I will not have her in the same house as this child, or you." He started to speak. I held up my hand. "Second," I said. Alara Vance will get tested. I will go to the hospital this afternoon and I will give them my blood. If I am a match, I will donate my marrow. I will do it to save your wife. Julian let out a sob of relief. Oh, Mom. Thank you. Thank you. I'm not finished, I said. Third, and this is not negotiable. Lyra stays here. His face fell. Mom, no. For how long? For as long as it takes, I said. She will stay with me. She will not be tested. She is a 6-year-old child, and she will not be put through a painful medical procedure for the woman who tortured her. Do you understand me? But, Mom, she's the best chance. She is off the table, Julian. I said, my voice rising. You will accept my chance, or you will get nothing. Lyra stays here. She will go to therapy. You and Kaylin will go to therapy. And if, and only if, Kaylin survives this, and if she spends a year in intense psychiatric care, and if Lyra's therapist says she is ready, then we can talk about a supervised visit. Maybe. He stared at me. He saw the fire was back. You failed your daughter, Julian, I said, my voice softening just a little. This is your chance to fix it. You let me save your wife. You let me save your child. Go. He looked at Lyra, who was watching us from the sofa. He looked at me. He nodded. Okay, Mom, he whispered. Okay. He turned and walked back to his expensive car, his shoulders slumped. I closed the door. I locked it. I leaned against it, and my own tears finally came. I cried for my son, for his sick wife, and most of all, for the little girl who had to pay the price. I wiped my face, took a deep breath, and turned to my granddaughter. Good morning, my love, I said, forcing a smile. Did you sleep well? I'm hungry, Grandma, she said. Good, I said, walking to the kitchen. I'll make us some pancakes. And then, you and I are going to plant some new roses. My name is Alara Vance. I am 81 years old. And my fight was far from over. I made a choice. I would save the woman, but I would protect the child. Do you think I did the right thing? This is the most important question. Was I right to keep Lyra from being tested? Let me know your honest answer in the comments, and subscribe for more stories just like this.